I am now live. Okay, so this is the second Men of Deen Diaries Instagram live. So I'm going to continue. Woke up this morning again, sitting down with the kids, and I'm just reading my Quran, trying to get them ready, trying to reinforce what I know. I've read this before, but I'm reading it again, and subhanAllah, every time you read this, you're getting new information. And so the context of the lives that I'm putting out is in the context of getting ready for marriage. It's not necessarily marriage counseling, but if you're going to get married, then you also have to be prepared for what marriage entails. Okay, and so this is again Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 233. This is really interesting. Okay, so this is about, I'll tell you what, I'll just read it. The mothers shall give suck to their offspring for 2 whole years, if the father desires to complete the term. But he shall bear the cost of the food and the clothing on equitable terms. No soul shall have a burden laid on it greater than it can bear. No mother shall be treated unfairly on account of her child. No father on account of the child. And heir shall be chargeable in the same way. If they both decide on weaning by mutual consent, and after due consultation, there is no blame on them. If ye decide on a foster mother for your offspring, there is no blame on you, provided that you pay the mother what you offered, on equitable terms. But fear Allah, and know that Allah sees well what you do. Okay, at first glance, and the first time I read it, I just read through it. It says, okay, so these are the instructions about, suckling a child, breastfeeding a child. And now I'm reading it, it's really interesting because, first of all, this is that it is the responsibility of men to be the caretakers of women. Okay, and so we know this. So it's interesting here that it says that mothers shall give suck to their offspring for 2 whole years. Okay, that's quite interesting. I didn't know that there was this fixed term. But in my personal experience, now I was breastfed for 2 years. My mom is not Muslim. Islam was nowhere practiced in my family before myself. And so I've reaped the benefits of that. I'm extremely healthy and I don't get sick. I've never had any grave illnesses, and I've been around for a minute. And so that's not necessarily the case with other siblings. My older brother, he also was breastfed for the same amount of time because my mom was home, and she was able to breastfeed us for that duration of time. But with the younger siblings, mom was working, and so there was a combination of stored baby breast milk and formula, and it's really interesting because my older brother is also very, very healthy, very strong, very durable. And so that makes a demonstrable difference to children being breastfed for that period of time. And when I had my own children, I remember I researched, again, this is apart from Islam. I was curious about what breast milk was. And as it turns out, the breast milk is very, very close to human blood. I don't really remember the science behind it. I just remember being really surprised that breast milk was, very similar to the content of human blood, except for a couple of different elements or nutrients or whatnot. But it makes sense, if you conceive that, the baby is attached to the mother by the umbilical cord. And that's where the baby gets all the nutrients. I mean, so the blood and the placenta, this is playing a large part in the building of the foundational health of the baby. And so this 2 years is very important. Now, if I'm thinking, like I'm a single man and I'm thinking whether I should get married or not, right? This is something that you have to take into account. If in the previous live we talked about, how the woman is the tilth, is the wife is the tilth of the husband. It's his job to cultivate her, to have children, to bear his children. And so this indicates that it's not ideal to just get married, jump into kids, that there's a time where, the husband needs to cultivate his wife and they need to grow and form this bond together before just jumping into children, because you can't, the wife, you marry her and you haven't cultivated her yet. Okay. But now we're dealing with economics, because if I'm a man and I know, there's this question about, okay, I'm a single guy and am I ready to get married? Like money wise, what do I need to have? Well, here's a big part of the answer, is that you have to walk into this knowing that if you're ready to have children, and you're wanting to have children, that you as a man have to be prepared to cover the expenses of your family on your own for 2 whole years. And what's interesting about stating that outright is that, isn't it understood that men are the caretakers of women and that we have to provide everything up front anyhow? But yet and still here it's stating again, but in the context of children, that mothers shall give suck to their offspring for 2 whole years, if the father desires to complete the term. But he shall bear the cost of their food and clothing on equitable terms. And so we already know this, yet and still it's being stated here again. And it's so interesting, because what this is, it's acknowledging that sometimes men can't handle it. Sometimes we need help. So here it says, if the father desires to complete the term. And then it says here of the father, but he shall bear the cost of their food and clothing on equitable terms. Next sentence, no soul shall have a burden laid on it greater than it can bear. So here it seems like the Quran, is acknowledging that this is a lot. This is a lot of responsibility for one person to carry all of this financial responsibility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that no soul, because here in the next sentence it says no mother shall be treated unfairly. And so here where it says no soul, it's referring to the man. No soul shall have a burden greater than it can bear, right after saying that the man is responsible for the food and clothing of both the child and the mother. And so it's very interesting how, God is so compassionate. Like he says, men, this is your responsibility. But he's like, hey, I realize that it's a lot of responsibility. And so if you need to make some adjustments, if the burden is too hard, here is how you can negotiate that. Okay? And so again, it says, mothers shall give suck to the offspring for 2 years if the father desires to complete the term. So it's telling men, like, on the one hand, it's your responsibility. It's your job. You have to do this. On the other hand, it's saying, hey, but we recognize, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes that this is a huge responsibility. And if something happens and it's too much to bear, then here's where you can modulate this thing. And so it goes on to say that if they both decide on weaning by mutual consent. And so, it gives equal power in the terms. It doesn't say, for example, it's the mother's job to breastfeed the child, and since she's the mother and it's her breast, she gets to do it. It's in recognition that, well, the reason why she can do this comfortably is because the husband is out there working. And so although it's her doing this work, it's him doing this work. And therefore, there's a negotiation or there's a discussion to take place regarding how she weans, how and when she weans the child. And it's so fair. It's so very fair. SubhanAllah. Because, again, I'm in Los Angeles, and in the West, there's all of this, kind of like women take possession of the child, and the child is mine, and you're working, and that's just the way it is. But God is saying there's necessary space for discussion and negotiation regarding this, because it's a big responsibility for the husband to provide all this. And if it becomes too much to bear, then here's where you guys can negotiate. If the father desires to complete the term. SubhanAllah. And then it goes on to say, but he shall bear the cost of food and clothing on equitable terms, and no soul shall have a burden laid greater than it can bear. No mother shall be treated unfairly on account of her child. And so what is this? Well, father can't go out to work and then come home and just, pissed off. It's like, man, this is a lot of work, and why the heck, you go get some baby formula. Like you're just laying around the house. Like, that's a no, because this is what you signed up for. It's written right here. It's written right here that when you get married and you have children, that's 2 years. That's 2 years that you must, as the husband, provide for and think about this. Like, if you're having multiple children, right? It's not like you're going to space them 10 years apart or 5 years apart. I mean, in general, you kind of want to space them out so you get the children done early, which allows you to kind of be free of child rearing earlier. The more space you have between children is the longer you have to, you have this burden of full provision for a family. And so in general, when you have kids, you kind of have them in some kind of succession, ideally, maybe 2 years apart. But then if you do that, think about it, 2 years, you provide, then you have another child, another 2 years, you provide. If you have another child, another 2 years, you provide. And this is then 6 years of absolutely no break. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so, it's when if you're a husband, if you're a single brother and you're thinking, okay, I'm going into marriage and I want to have my family, and you're wondering, like, how much money do I need to have? And this is, and this is why, for example, when you're dealing with the bride price, like, parents, please have some mercy on us brothers. It's not easy, and there's a lot that we have to take into account going into marriage, considering a family, and so making this huge, bride price, this huge dowry, then conceivably it also then will affect the timing of the grandchildren coming, because it's like, okay, I need to pay this dowry, and maybe it's this huge amount of money, I can't afford it, but SubhanAllah, I want to marry this sister. So you marry this sister, but then it's like, okay, well, we can't really have children right away, or because I need to recuperate from this big dowry. But if you have a reasonable dowry, then doesn't that put you in a financially better position that you can have kids sooner rather than later? So this is also something that parents of children will need to consider when they're dealing with the bride price. Understanding, really having kind of a reasonable and soft heart, understanding what this brother has to do to provide for this family. And Islamically, like, if the more grandkids you want, is the more reasonable you should be. The sooner you want the grandkids is the more reasonable kind of you should be, right? So no father on account of the child, no father on account of his child, and here shall be chargeable in the same way, if they both decide on weaning by mutual consent. And so the father can't come in and say, okay, listen, I can't afford this. It's just too much money. You need to wean the child. This isn't how it works. It says mutual consent. And after consultation, There is no blame on them. Subhanallah. You know, how merciful is this? And so, oh, and the other aspect of this is that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving these the rights of the baby. Like, you know, babies can't speak for themselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, listen, mother, father, this child here has a right, you know, and this is basically the right to a healthy foundation, a healthy foundational body. He's saying that this is the right of a child, because when you're saying suckling for 2 years, this is shaping the immune system and all of the vitamins, nutrients, and minerals that are going to be the foundation of this child's health. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying health, fundamental health, and the healthiest possible way is the right of children, of babies who cannot speak for themselves. Subhanallah. So, brothers getting married, when you're making your calculations, here's the calculation for kids. You know, 2 years of you know, focused earning. And so if you've got that in the bank, subhanallah. If you don't, then look at the number of kids you want to have and look at the timing in which you want to have them. And that's what you should have in the bank to enable you, or at least, you know, your income should be able to cover this on a perpetual basis, depending on the number and the timing of the kids that you want to have. So this is marriage math from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's it. Hope you find it interesting and helpful. And please leave any comments and share this video to as many single brothers and sisters as you can, inshallah. And I will look forward to speaking to you next time. Assalamu alaikum.